That's a focus on affordability. That's the Prime Minister's pitch to Canadians these days, reviving a previously dropped campaign promise from 2015 to waive the GST on new rental construction and launching a plan to try and stabilize grocery prices. It'll start with the Industry Minister, François-Philippe Champagne, meeting with the heads of Canada's 5 big grocery chains on Monday in Ottawa. But here's the question. How much can the federal government actually do to influence pricing? Is this the right approach, or is it just a bit of political theatre? Let's bring in today's MPs. Joining us now, Liberal MP from Ontario, Julie DeBruzen, is standing by, as well as the Deputy Conservative Leader, Melissa Lantsman, and the NDP Caucus Chair, Jenny Kwan, as well. And good to see all three of you. And Melissa, I'm going to start with you, if I can, and how you see this playing out.
Well, I think the Liberals have just woken up to the fact that grocery prices are high, even though Canadians have faced 20% higher grocery inflation. More Canadians than ever this year have used a food bank. And the Prime Minister's now suggesting that new taxes are not off the table. There's one thing and one thing he can do today to lower the cost of food in this country, and that's to scrap the carbon tax. It taxes the farmer that grows it. It taxes the trucker that delivers the food. The grocery store taxes the consumer, and the consumer pays higher prices. And he could have done that. Instead, he continues to vote to make not only one carbon tax higher every single year, but he's added another carbon tax to it all.
We've got Julie DeBruzen as well, Liberal MP from the Toronto area. Julie, good to see you as always. What can Justin Trudeau actually do here to force lower prices at the grocery stores?
Well, I think yesterday we saw exactly that, which is that we are calling the major grocers to come up with a plan by Thanksgiving on exactly how they are going to show that they can stabilize food inflation. And beyond that, if they do not have that plan, then we will take further steps to make sure that's put in place. We're also going to be strengthening the Competition Act, because more competition will actually help us to also reduce prices at the food.
Jenny, your party has been pushing against big grocery chains and their profits for more than a year now. The government finally getting the message? What do you think?
Well, what the Liberals are saying and suggesting is what the NDP came up with 6 months ago. So we've had the rich CEOs come before the committee. We forced them to come, and that's already been done. What needs to be done now, of course, is for the government to take action. What we know is this. You know, asking Galen Weston to make less profit is like asking Pierre Poilievre to treat climate change as a real crisis. That's not going to happen. And so what we need the government to do is take this issue seriously, and we need to address the excessive profiteering by these grocers. And we need to actually have the government implement the excessive profiteering tax, something that the NDP's called for a very long time now, and we need the government to take action.
Melissa, do you think any of these CEOs at the big chains are going to say, okay, you're right, we're being greedy, we're going to cut our prices?
Todd, you can't even make this stuff up. The government's solution, the coalition, the costly coalition solution to Canadians, is to impose yet another tax on food, another tax on groceries. This is what these two panelists are saying. This is what they are telling Canadians. Food is not expensive enough. We are going to take all measures, including a new tax on groceries, to add to the first carbon tax that they've put on farmers, truckers, and everybody else in the economy. And then the second carbon tax that they've also added, which is taxing gas, groceries, home heating, everything that you buy. So their new taxes aren't going to make food prices cheaper in this country.
Julie, you wanted to jump in, and I know, if I can just say, that one of the things the Prime Minister did say earlier this week, he said, look, you know, we want a plan by Thanksgiving, otherwise all options are on the table, and that did include the possibility of tax measures targeting the grocery chains. Is that on the table, Julie?
What we're talking about is making sure that the grocery chains are accountable for what they're doing. They are facing record profits, and at the same time, we're hearing from people in our communities and absolutely seeing it that people are having a hard time accessing healthy food. So we are making sure not only that they're coming to Ottawa and then required to show us a plan by Thanksgiving. If they don't have that plan, then we'll be taking further steps to make sure that they do what needs to be done to stabilize food inflation. We did that actually in Toronto when you saw it with the telecom companies, making sure that we would be able to get access to telecom services on subways, and it worked because that's exactly what's happening.
But
so we'll start with a collaborative way, and then we'll take next steps. But the part I wanted to jump in on was there's no, I hear Melissa keep on talking about carbon pricing and taxes. There was no announcement yesterday that we're putting in further taxes. And I also want to be clear, climate change actually costs us. It makes food more expensive because what happens, you have droughts, you have floods. You talk to farmers, they're telling you that they're seeing the impact of natural disasters. That impacts food prices.
You mentioned, though, Julie, the idea that, if they don't do the right thing, then we'll move on to other measures. I mean, those measures could include taxes for the grocery stores, I gather. That's what the Prime Minister seemed to be indicating. Doesn't that mean that they could potentially be downloaded onto consumers?
We're not going to jump ahead because first we're going to try that collaborative approach. But what we want to do is to make sure that we're standing up for Canadians. And in fact, when we Jenny just referred to that study that happened, there were Liberal MPs also there at the table, making sure we were asking tough questions from grocers and making sure that what we heard from them was that we need to take further steps on affordability for food. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to stand up for Canadians. That's what we're going to make sure is that Canadians have, more affordable food. That's what we're hearing. That's what we're going to do. We're going to deliver for Canadians.
Jenny, how's this going to play out? What do you think?
Well, look of course, the Liberals and the Conservatives don't want to go after the rich CEOs. Empire just released this information that in the first quarter of the fiscal in 2024, their profit went up $92 million. Let's just be clear. There is excessive profiteering taking place, and we need to say that enough is enough. In fact, the UN has actually called for governments in different nations to address this issue and bring in an excessive profiteering tax. No more delays, no more excuses, no more justifications. We need to actually go after the people who are profiting, and the rich CEO needs to pay $92 million more profits just in their first quarter. Just imagine that. And if that was returned back to the community and reduced grocery prices and so on, how far that would go. So, the Liberals and Conservatives don't want to take on rich CEOs. The NDP, we do. It's time for action.
Yeah, Empire is the parent company, of course, of Sobeys. Okay, back to you, Melissa. We know there were some frank discussions, quote unquote, at the Liberal caucus meeting in London this week behind closed doors. No doubt some Liberal MPs worried about bad political polling for their party and for Trudeau personally. Then we see this series of affordability measures being announced. What's going on?
Well, first of all, it's been 8 years, and the Liberals have just woken up to the fact that Canadians can no longer afford to do anything. They can't afford to put gas in their cars, groceries in their fridge, or heat their homes. And now 3 Liberal MPs are asking for a carve-out on the very carbon tax that both of these parties, in fact, all of the parties in the House, continue to vote to increase on Canadians. If you want cheaper food and lower prices, you're going to have to get rid of this carbon tax. A carbon tax that has put us in 58th place, according to the UN, in terms of our environmental record, and one that hasn't hit a single target that the Liberals, they themselves, have put into place. So it's not an environment plan, it is a tax plan, and these two parties together will continue to impose more taxes on Canadians to solve every single problem as they continue to struggle. And the poll numbers will tell you that. That's why they've been kicked into action. That's when they act.
Back to Liberal Julie DeBruzen in Toronto. Julie, how worried are you and other Liberal MPs about the political fortunes, political future of your party?
I think that, we have heard from Canadians about it being a really challenging time. That's certainly what I've heard when I've been talking with people. Coming out of COVID, it's been a really tough time for people, and we hear them, and that's exactly why you see that we're stepping up, and we have been there throughout COVID. We were there. We were make sure that we were supporting small businesses, that we were supporting Canadians, and we will continue to be there because we know that we have to be there throughout all of these tough times, and we're going to be there shoulder to shoulder with them to make sure that we get to the other side.
How much worry was there, though, in those corridors at the Liberal caucus, Julie?
What we said over and over again, and I think you saw it, when we were out yesterday and standing with the Prime Minister, is that we had conversations where we shared what we were hearing and what the solutions were that we wanted to work towards to get there. And you're seeing that being acted upon. And that is something that as a group, we can feel really like we have been heard, our communities are being heard, and we're taking the actions that we need and what people in our communities want to see. They want to see us taking action on food prices. We've been doing that. They wanted to see us take action on housing, and we're working on that. And it's not the full final steps. We've said that these are the parts we're working on now, and we're going to continue to keep adding to that and keep working to make sure that we have Canadians, get through to the other side of the challenges we're with right now.
Jenny, I know the Conservatives have certainly been tying your party, the NDP, to the Liberals closely in their attacks, public statements. Are you worried about the polling we've been seeing this summer showing just how far ahead Pierre Poilievre is over the Liberals and the NDP?
Well, the Conservatives, of course, will spread misinformation. We're hearing it over and over again. And what is happening, of course, is this. The Conservatives spent $3 million for a remake for their new leader. But what people need to know, of course, is the record of Pierre Poilievre when he was part of the Harper government, when he was the Minister of Housing, for example. Canada lost some 800,000 units of low-cost housing under his watch. The housing crisis is here today, faced by Canadians because successive Liberal and Conservative governments cut social housing and co-op housing funding. And as a result, we see an escalating housing crisis. So yes, the Conservatives will put on a face to say who they are, but you need to check the record, and it is important to see what they have done. And so from the NDP's perspective, what we're going to continue to do, and which is what the Liberals and Conservatives are ignoring, and that is for the government to take housing seriously, to show leadership, and we need a true investment into the building of social housing and co-op housing like we used to. Back in the day, when the soldiers returned from the war, the government of the day made a clear decision to say that we will not allow for soldiers and their families to become unhoused. And the government did it. They actually built housing, they brought in programs, and people got housed. So we need to do the same here. At the same time, we also need to say enough already to the corporate landlords who are rental evicting people. They are buying up the low-cost rental apartments and causing and displacing people. And we need to say enough. That cannot be allowed to happen. Housing is for the people, and we need to put people before profits. And finally, we need to support the nonprofits to do what they know and what they have been doing for a very long time, and that is to get into the market, and so that they can hold the housing stock that come onto the market for the community, and we need to support them to address the housing crisis. So a number of measures that the NDP has put forward that is not just reliant on the market and does not add further problems to the housing crisis. And the Liberals and the Conservatives need to acknowledge the fact that they were part and parcel in causing the housing crisis that we face today, and we need bold action and action that actually takes on corporate landlords with real investments for the people.
Jenny Kwan with the NDP, Julie DeBruzen with the Liberals, and Melissa Landsman for the Conservatives. Great to see all three of you. Thanks, as always, for taking time for CTV.